I'm just going to introduce Vanda through her job titles, plural, because as it transpires, Vanda's job title changed 5 days ago, so keeping me on my toes. But the previous job title is entirely relevant, as is the new one. So as I said, Vanda's Viaplay Group. Previously SVP and Group Head of Acquisitions, Content Distribution and Partners. As of the 1st of December, now EVP and Chief Commercial Officer, North America and Viaplay Select. So, Vanda, if you could start maybe by telling us about that new role and how it plays into the international content market.
Indeed. Thank you, Guy. The new role is extremely relevant to this, almost a setup for the occasion. So in short, it is about taking our content globally and our international or our non-English, mostly productions globally. I can describe it break it down in 3 aspects. So one is my responsibility to launch and run our Viaplay streaming, direct-to-consumer streaming service in the US and Canada, and that will, unlike our other markets where we have a broad service, in the US and Canada we'll have a service that comprises mostly of our Nordic content as well as other international originals and selected acquired shows. And then the second part is our business-to-business branded content concept, Viaplay Select, which we have launched this year, still as part of the content distribution incentive. So Viaplay Select is a service that we bring to various platforms and local streamers around the world, mostly with a pipeline of our first-run content as well as other. It's a mini Viaplay service fit to serve partners and strengthen the offering of partners around the world. And then the third and most kind of standard in the industry already part is content distribution and maximizing the value of our content internationally via simple content sales, straight content sales, as well as other forms of monetizing on our IP.
Sure. So that cut down part of Viaplay Originals obviously makes the rights situation very clear, but you saw in my presentation I ran through what I was calling a virtuous circle of international production fueling ever more international production. In terms of global content, we are definitely still in the middle of a boom. What do you see as the driving force for this change?
Indeed, it is the fact that the non-English or international content has been put or forced in front of the eyes of the viewer, which was not the case before. So the platforms themselves, Netflix, of course, and other global streamers have put the content in front of the viewers and pushed it in a way that it was not done before. So that helped it be recognized. Some years ago, you would only get a French show or a Swedish show, usually acquired by maybe another public broadcaster from another market. But now it's all over the place. And we are doing the same, in essence, with Viaplay Select, where we're taking our content pipeline, which is mostly non-English or Nordic with some international elements, and bringing it to, with the help of partners in other markets or local streamers. We are helping them and they are trusting our content pipeline to put this content on the front of their offering for their customers and viewers.
Okay. Well, I believe we have a clip, just a short clip, showing the autumn highlights of Viaplay Originals. So if we could just play that clip quickly, please. Definitely an impressive selection. I'm looking forward to Litvinenko myself, as I remember that incident very, very clearly. Tell us, though, about a few. I mean, I know that's your latest, on-air autumn content, but thinking longer term, and Viaplay's been in the originals game for some time now. Tell us about a few of your notable international success stories and what they tell us, what we can learn from them.
Of course, we have a lot of our originals have been sold internationally and have performed well, and we have data from 3 sources. One is the reports from distributors that used to sell some of our earlier originals. We also have the data from our own Viaplay services in other markets, that show the use of let's say, Swedish content into Netherlands or Poland. And we also have information from this year from Viaplay Select. And from this, we have, so the typical first success, which we kind of is expected on the Nordic noir and crime genre. Of course, we had the Whistings, Furia, Those Who Kill, Machinery, Trom. Some of the shows either made it super well in big markets like the UK and the US or Australia, and also have really created a loyalty in our own markets outside the local market of the show. But then the next step, and what actually is further good news, because we all know that crime travels. That is a typical understanding amongst buyers as well. Okay, crime and drama travels more. But more recently, we had a big success with real life stories or comedy. 2 big examples is Love Me, which already is it's been distributed in many countries and has done super well, but also is on the way for 2 remakes in Australia, Poland, and then the US in discussion. And Perni, a Norwegian story about a mother who has challenges. And usually some years ago, someone would say this type of show would not, I mean, we have it in every market. It would not travel, and we've been so glad to see that it has traveled, that it actually also in our Australia that we launched it, it's done so well. I didn't expect it. And then, of course, a lot of young adult drama, which is more also expected because young adult or younger audiences are even more open than older audiences to non-English content. So we had fresh shows like Thunder in My Heart, Delete Me, Sisters, Where Are You? And there are some shows that have been doing quite well in multiple markets. So that's good. And I should not forget to mention a crime, but Estonian, our first Estonian original, which myself, because mostly our content has been Nordic, and Nordic has been known for its quality, and it's more accepted around the world as after the US or UK content. I think Nordic content has been recognized. And then we have this, our first Estonian original, who shot Otto Miller, who we have included, and we've launched it in many markets, and we've also sold it in many markets. And initially, I was thinking, we're going for partners, we expect the Nordic content, and we are giving them an Estonian one. Will they notice? Will they bother? And it has done so well. And actually, that is a good example of, again, we did this, that I am not aware of another Estonian show that has been pushed, but possibly this is because that it had its chance if it wasn't. So yes, these are a few stories.
And there are many examples of breakout hits that no one thought would ever perform, and they've gone, global and become absolute mega franchises. But let's talk a little bit about money, because one of the great advantages of making content outside the US and increasingly outside of the UK and some of the other big European markets is budget. What sort of difference are we looking at? And I know it's a how long is a piece of string question, but what sort of difference are we looking at in cost for production for a US-UK type production versus rest of world, if we can be that broad?
Yes, on a broad level, of course, is massive. And it's something that I never quite understood, why the US shows are so expensive, how they are fattening up the budget so much. But for instance, a good US show would at least start with 2-3 million per episode US dollars and then go to 4, 6, 8, 12 million is not rare. In Europe, of course, the more bigger market shows would be around 2 million, 3 million, the big shows, and then the reality is that in smaller markets or our Nordic markets, as well as other, you start from 500,000 per episode to 1.5 to 2 million US dollars, euros. Of course, we are aware that in other markets, like this region or around in the Baltics that we have, the budgets are much lower, sometimes around 100 to 200,000.
So we're talking order of magnitude difference,
yes.
Effectively. So that's not a bad selling point if you're looking to make new original content. In terms of, again, thinking about non-English markets and obviously outside the US, where are you seeing the key emerging regions or countries?
Yes, there are two aspects of where most production goes, I suppose, and that is, one is, if we are talking about physical production, where they are the hubs, the production hubs, and the other is the places where there is more commissioning of content that goes internationally. So on the former side, which is not always linked to who is commissioning, but it's worth bringing it up because I think those regions also are in the first step of further potential production. So regions like the Baltics and Czech has been production hubs. That means a lot of, we have shot a lot of our originals or part of our originals in these markets. And I think in the Balkan region as well, there is some booming use of production services. That doesn't mean which I think is a good start for these markets, as once the producers start proving themselves on supporting international shows. That could also be a step on them then doing their local shows, which are more likely to be sold or be trusted by internationally. And then answering the point of your question, which is more the language of production. Clearly for us, at least it is the Nordic markets and the markets where we have our local, our broad services, so the Netherlands, Poland, Baltics. But generally, as you have shown before, wherever there is good quality production coupled with the need of the streamers to serve the local audience, there will be more productions.
It's interesting that you mention countries like the Czech Republic and Poland there. You have a long history of investing in studio infrastructure and some incentives as well. So I'm guessing that's playing into that.
I think currently we haven't seen that those, or at least I have not, I'm not aware of any big success of through local commissions of these markets, making it internationally. But I think the hope could be that if they can support big productions, maybe there are markets where they could start building equivalent value international shows.
And flipping it, I guess, to the other side in terms of taking that content out to market and selling it on, are there markets where do you think that are more open than others? I guess, the Netflix effect has been to put non-English content in front of a global audience, but are there markets today that are really accepting and some that are still don't want to watch subtitles?
Yes, definitely there is, but we definitely see a shift. We see a shift in the buying. I don't know which markets are harder to penetrate with non-English content. I suppose one would think the US, but that is not quite true because the US is massive, and there is, for instance, our shows have done very well in the US. Both the Netflix, one of them on Netflix, but also on other smaller niche platforms like the Sundance or AMC. But you could still think that the majority of Americans might not be watching non-English content. So I'm not sure how to put the point on specific markets not accepting. We are seeing a massive growth also both on the buying side of our content, which, yes, partly could be to a good job that we've been doing in the past year, but I think is also, yes, due to the content selling more. And example for me, and kind of a small big success, is that on our starting journey of our content distribution hub, which this year was mostly the first year, we have sold for a limited volume of content much more than we have seen grow sales in a few markets than distributors have done previously over the period of 5 years for much bigger volume of our originals. And we can say, okay, that's one, because we did such a good job. But no, I truly think it's because the audiences and the buyers are more open to non-English content.
So did I hear correctly then that basically the value of non-English content is going up and up and up? Clearly, I guess, being non-English does impact the price you can get, but how is that changing? Is it changing?
I hope it would change. Of course, there is a difference in the price. And the main reason for the difference in the price, let's admit, it is natural. The US shows have been there a proven success that buyers around the world can more easily think or say that they can rely on, which boils down possibly to the fact that they have also more recognizable talent all over the place. And so then with non-English content, of course, the question is also who is starring in it. That could be big in their own country, but not in another. So that does impact the price. But we're changing, we're hoping to change that. Nevertheless, despite the difference in price, that also means something for the buyers internationally, that one could try more international content, put it in front of their audiences, trust it, and then they would get a much higher return of investment. Because of course, if one considers how much a show costs and how successful it is, I mean, if a show costs £10 and it is that successful, and another one costs quite less, but it is that successful, then obviously this one is much better because yes, it's a much higher return of investment.
Yeah. So also, I think you just, in your answer there, you hit on an answer to a previous question where you're saying, why on earth are US shows so much more expensive? Well, you mentioned the talent there, and I think it's talent, facility shortage, all of that is playing into the inflation in the cost of making content in the US, and as I said, some of the other big European markets. We've just seen, or we caught the end because we were in the preparation room, but we've just seen a panel on co-production. And on the face of it, once you start making shows in multiple languages, potentially, that should be ideal for co-production deals. But the flip side of that is that global platform thing I was talking about. It complicates the rights situation. If you need to exploit that show globally in order to make your investment worthwhile, that clearly goes against a co-production model. So I wonder, Viaplay is obviously becoming ever more global. How does co-production fit with that sort of conundrum of a global streamer?
It fits very well, and I think co-productions are still relevant even for global streamers, and increasingly for global streamers, I think, even to the extent that the global streamers and Viaplay, who is not quite global but very international in multiple markets, are interested in working in the main market of the show with another player, but also co-producing with another market. So in our case, co-productions are important mostly for what we call international English language shows, or mostly English. So on our most local shows, we still have collaborations, but the reality is that we would approach the model of pre-buy or pre-sale, or the model of whether we are keeping the content to support the local partners through Viaplay Select. So in essence, we are keeping our local productions for our partners internationally to be part of our brand. Nevertheless, there are still in big shows quite important collaborations with the public broadcasters in a few occasions, or big partners from a market like Germany, for instance, or Belgium. Where we see most of our contribution as a co-producer rather than an original commissioner is the more international co-productions, where we come on board sometimes ourselves as a secondary commissioner on a BBC or a Sky show, or even an HBO US show, where we would be part of it, but not a leading part of that. And we do this quite a lot, not always in the form of executive producing a show, but simply pre-buying and agree a deal in advance, which we have done a lot in my previous role. And that has allowed us to secure a very strong international, including American, sometimes, content pipeline for our broad services. And that we keep doing, and I think it's a good idea for all local streamers to try to find pre-buys and collaborations that would allow them to secure a better pipeline of content, versus allowing it all to go to kind of a global global platforms.
It's interesting that you highlight English language as where you're doing a lot of co-production, given that we've just been talking about how damn expensive it is.
No, but it's damn expensive to do it in the US. But it could be an international show. Sometimes, yes, an international English language where we would come on board, but we would not be the main driver. In essence, it is a form of acquisition.
Yeah, sure. One thing that's, that everything's constantly changing in this business, but one thing that has changed very recently is advertising on the global streamers. So, Netflix, we all know, took this snap decision when things went slightly awry in the first quarter this year with their growth trajectory. Disney Plus is doing the same, HBO Max, we've got Peacock in the US, and others, of course. And I really wonder, streaming has been characterized by risk-taking with content in respect of international stories, non-English language, taking that content global. Advertising, in a way, sometimes shies away from risk-taking. I wonder if you feel that this shift will impact what gets made.
I don't think it would impact what gets made as such, because the streaming commissioning is not, I don't think it is risk-taking. It is driven also, it's commercial, it is driven completely by performance. So we're not commissioning, neither Netflix or anyone for that matter usually commission a show that they believe it's not going to work for the audiences. They commission shows because that of course they could be more edgy and more interesting, but the commissioning is driven by expectation on performance, and performance in streaming is usage and sales. By sales we mean selling subscriptions, how many people will watch the show, will come to the service because of a show. So streaming is not public broadcasting, but it has been a commercial approach, where you are very right on wondering what would happen is because usually what one would see on free TV or on AVOD platforms is even more commercial or more mainstream. And so, of course, it is true that maybe the audience that would sit in front of the advertising-supported service might be slightly different. And if the audience is slightly different, then the content would be slightly different. But there's still a streaming business that you need to drive subscribers and have good content that will do that.
Okay, so as long as edgy sells, we're still going to get edgy Estonian new drama, even though advertisers sometimes are a flight risk, as we've seen in the past.
Yes, I think of course advertising then will affect, I suppose, the shows that are aimed for advertising. But it is interesting, though, where before there was a pure split on. That's actually a very good point, and what the fact that previously or normally you would either have a show that is aimed for an advertising funded platform or service, and there the mentality would be around that. And then you had the streamers whose they are driven by sales on the SVOD platform. And so now also the streaming platform would be driven in decisions by advertisers, and they wouldn't separate. So actually, that might be interesting to see for Netflix. You're right, because Netflix would have to consider at the same time both the sales of SVOD and the sales of ads for all pieces of content. But I suppose they may say, okay, they would still need to serve both or all audiences.
Yeah. It will be interesting as they're entering a mature market and not in that sort of meteoric growth phase, what will happen there. Definitely one to watch. Certainly, as an analyst, we like to look for correlations, partly because it's one of the easiest statistical methods to grasp and to carry out. But I wonder, what is the correlation, or I guess more specifically, when you look to do a new production, how does the location, the language of that production relate to your markets? Is there a pure relationship between this is a priority, we're going to make stuff here?
Yes, and let's not, we cannot pretend that we are making a Swedish show predominantly from someone who sits in Japan. Of course, when you are commissioning a show that is in a local language, you are having first in mind that territory, and therefore, as a streamer, you want to make shows in the countries where you need to boost your service and grow your service in these countries. But it is also a fact that increasingly we are considering the international audience in this game.
So that plays into the country and the language that you're making the show in, that international audience. I guess where does the story come in versus the geographic location versus the country of production?
The country of production could be different to the language and the story because it is simply a shooting location with, of course, strong services to support that. So that is irrelevant. It's like a matter of convenience and cost and result of deliverables in the production quality. But we, as I think everyone is producing more. We are producing more for the Netherlands, for the Baltics, Poland, and all the Nordic markets that we have a broad service, as well as the UK, where we have we have launched a streaming service in the UK, also with both sports and Nordic and international drama. So we are producing for these markets, but having also the international audience in mind, and the stories are usually local but with international appeal. We are quite interested, well, not simply because we are interested, but because we think everyone else is interested on strong local stories or true stories or events that they are relevant to a country, but that makes them more easily transferable in other markets.
Okay, so to develop that theme, and I guess to wrap up, and for the benefit of any producers in the audience, we talked, of course, or you mentioned Nordic Noir. That was a massive export. What in terms of what you're looking for from international partners for production. Firstly, what are you looking for? And secondly, what would you say will be the next big thing in terms of genre, narrative, story focus, etc.?
We are looking at all genres, or most genres, and we are producing in most genres. With regards to the next big thing, I am cynical about making suggestions of what the next big thing is, but what I do know is what our commissioning team appreciates a lot is some big true stories that are local. Of course, they come from a country or a set of countries, but they are also either known or would easily be transferred or be cause interest internationally. And then within that genre of actually even biopics of major figures in various markets or major events. And actually here it's worth mentioning that we have, for instance, an incentive to have at least 2 feature films a year that are, it could be mostly in English language or very big productions, but they would be about the story or the life of some Nordic or other figures in our markets or events. So we've just launched Hilma by Lasse Hallström, which is the story of Hilma af Klint, a big Swedish artist of the previous century, and also have a Stockholm Bloodbath, which in essence is a story of the 16th, of a major historic event of the 16th century, and we are doing this in the English language, actually, and it is aimed at a global audience, and it's aimed also or predominantly for our markets outside our core markets, while actually we know that it has this local element that makes the local country where the story derived proud of that story and thus more interested. So I think that's a nice circle that we are closing at, started from local shows that goes internationally and talking about international shows with a local element that are international but can appeal locally as well.
Sure, great. So you've heard it from the horse's mouth, true stories, well-known characters, local shows that can go international. No pitching until the drinks party tonight, but then we're all off limits and off rules. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. I've certainly learned something. I hope you found it informative. And as I say, we will see you all for drinks later tonight. Thank you very much,
Thank
Vanda
you so
Rapti,
much.
Viaplay Group. Thank you.
Thank you very much.